to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined as always by my guy on the East Coast. A little getaway for Nate in New Hampshire right now. We are looking at two more second round playoff games here. We're going to go ahead and talk about Philly and the Hawks in the second round series there, and then also a game that'll start on Monday. Series overview of the Nuggets and the Suns, who walloped the LA Lakers on Thursday evening. Some surprises, some not surprises. Injuries continue to be the factors. That's some things we'll look at in the first two series here, Nate. But let's go ahead and give everyone the lines for that Philly and Atlanta series.
Yeah, the Hawks right now for game one plus 2.5 at Philly as we await the status of Joel Embiid. The total is set at 220.5, which I would be leaning under on that given the Hawks defense lately. Hawks plus 120 on the money line. And the other game, the series odds there, plus 154 for the Hawks to win, minus 192 for Philly. Philly in 6 is plus 450. Philly in 7 plus 350. You can get all sorts of odds. And I will point out before the other series that there's all these player props now up on DraftKings, including how many points per game Stars will average in that Nets-Bucks series. I'm intrigued. Betting under James Harden on 27 points per game. I think he goes under there. He has not been scoring the same. Durant going over 29 points per game. Just an example, and we'll see more of those props come up as these series get closer to starting. The other series we are going to talk about, the Nuggets are plus 4.5 in game one there. The total is 220. The Nuggets are plus 175 on the series line and plus 2,000 to win the title at this point. The Suns plus 1,100. So we'll start with that East Coast series, though, Josh. The Sixers now dropped to plus 1,300, I saw, in terms of odds to win the title because of that Embiid news. What do you think? Can they win this series with him at less than full strength, playing with that torn meniscus?
It's interesting that, they were actually plus 650, Philly was, to win the title before the Embiid injury during that Washington series in the first round there. It's really interesting. Something exciting for this series, I think, is going to be, what can Trae Young do against, an Embiid-less Philadelphia team? But even when he is there, he's not the one guarding Trae. Obviously, he's the one standing there in the paint waiting for Trae as he comes in and tries to pull those floaters that he crushed the Knicks with in the first round series. So I think, that is the question. Look, right now, nothing else really matters in terms of, priority when it comes to whether or not Embiid plays. I think they can win the series without Embiid. Just to say that, obviously, their odds diminish greatly. But I think when you look at, the talent that they have and the wing defense and the length on defense that they have, even without Embiid, obviously they can bring in Dwight Howard, and they've shown the ability to even play small with Ben Simmons at that super versatile 5 position, especially on defense. So I think they have ways to contain and handle the Trae Young and Bogey, really, as you got to talk about them, I think, in tandem as important, both equally important to this Hawks team as each other. When you look at the Hawks right now, obviously the story starts with when Nate McMillan took over, and since then they've had the 8th best offense in the league. They went 27-11 since it was about March 1st. But that happened to be the exact moment in time that Bogdanovich came back from his injuries as well. So he was there for Nate McMillan's very first game, and he's been a part of that entire 27-11 run as well, which has been, incredibly helpful, as we've seen, for their offense, which has been 8th in the league since then and climbed all the way to 10th best overall for the entire season after an incredibly slow start. So we know what they can do in offense. I think that's going to be the key matchup for the entire series to the offense is, can they score against Philly with or without Embiid? But then honestly, what's going to, the other end is the other end of the floor there in terms of Philly's offense. You look at what they do without Embiid, their offensive rating during the season was about 30 points worse with him off, not playing in the games that they missed him. So there's a huge difference there. And then that's obviously starts
30 points worse
or 30 points. So it's huge. It's insane. Yeah. And the net rating and their net rating without him was also, difference about 12. 12 points better when he's on the floor. So their defense gets slightly worse. Their offense gets much, much worse. So we'll see what they can do on that end of the floor. And really, it's, we saw what, that happened to Ben Simmons in the first round when Embiid didn't play into the hack of Ben. But really, I think, look, we didn't learn anything from the regular season here in terms of who was playing. There was stars missing on both sides in all three matchups. Philly did manage to win 2 of 3. But I don't know. I mean, anything that you're specifically looking for, things to call out, like moving past the Embiid injury even, right? Like what's the next set of questions that we're looking at to sort of decide how we derive some value from who's going to take away this series?
Well, I go back to the thought that the under is more likely to hit, as you said, with the Sixers offense dropping so badly without their big guy. I think even if he's out there in less than full strength, Clint Capella can handle him. I mean, Clint Capella is a fantastic individual defender. The Hawks are playing lights out defense. Their 102 defensive rating against New York, very impressive. And if the Sixers don't have their guys, they could fall victim to that. We could see more low-scoring games. And then I'm looking at the other side when you talk about matchups is Ben Simmons being sick on Trae Young. That's going to be a rude awakening for him after, getting anywhere he wanted against the Knicks. He's up against maybe the defensive player of the year who has, definitely the tools to keep him out of the paint. So we're going to see more pulling from deep, I think, from the Hawks. And in the playoffs, those percentages aren't really going to be that high. So I think that's why we're going to get a lot of unders in the early going here until the total adjusts.
And one thing I would add to that point too is, Ben Simmons, look, he will spend some time on Trae. Also, Matisse Thybulle will spend a ton of time on Trae. And that might be the best 1-2 wing, guard wing defender combo in the league. Interesting stat about Thybulle real quick. In game 2, he had 5 blocks and 4 steals in just 20 minutes. That's the most for any guard, guard position player in NBA history in the playoffs, which is incredible.
Is he a guard?
Yeah, I mean, he's huge to that extent. You're right. Whatever. It's an interesting stat. But at any rate, if you do see Simmons playing that 5 in a small ball lineup, trying to keep Capella off the floor, playing too fast for him, then you will see Thybulle, right, on Trae Young.
Yeah, and Danny Green, I think, even more than the second year man Thybulle, who's going to probably play a lot of small ball 5. I would completely disagree with that position classification. Looking at the other series that we know is set, game 1 in Phoenix on Monday. The Suns, just a fantastic performance to blow out the Lakers in consecutive games, especially from Devin Booker, 30 points per game on 49, 43, 94% splits. Looks kind of familiar when you look across the aisle at Jokic, who went 33 points per game on 53, 43, 92% splits in the last series, helping Denver post a 123 offensive rating. And they gave up a 122 offensive rating to Portland, which is a perimeter-based team. And the Suns are doing a similar type of approach right now. I don't think anything's really going to change. When we hammered the over in that last series, it hit in all but one game, I believe, and it hit in 9 of the last 11 playoff meetings with Denver and Portland. I think the same trends are going to stick with Jokic being the guy who's not your defensive stopper, but he will get you buckets. He will get you that offensive rating in the high 120s, or at least around 120. And Phoenix, the way they were playing at home down the stretch, they ramped up their pace after the All-Star break. It was 13th at home versus 22 on the road. They averaged 116.5 points per game at home all season. Booker had no issues against Denver in their 2 really exciting matchups. They went to overtime in back-to-back games in January. Booker put up plenty of numbers, 26.5 points on similar efficient shooting. So I think with no real healthy guards for the Nuggets, I don't see how they're stopping Book. But the Nuggets are going to continue to score efficiently. I mean, I got to mention Monte Morris, who has an individual offensive rating of 127 now in the playoffs. Now that he's healthy, they don't have to play Campazzo. They can just run that 2-man game with Morris and Jokic, and it takes a lot of stress off Michael Porter Jr. who hasn't gotten off in this season series, but I think he will. He was finishing strong in their series. I think he will be a factor. And as we know, Josh, Michael Porter Jr. minutes equal points equal overs, and that's what I'm looking for off the bat there.
100%. And there's nobody like Anthony Davis in terms of defensive ability on the Nuggets. And I bring that up because when Anthony Davis was playing in this series, the Suns struggled to score. But if you look at why a ton of these games went over, it actually wasn't even Phoenix's fault because they were doing their job of scoring a ton of points in those blowouts against LA to end the series. It was the Lakers who had 18 points midway through the second quarter of the last game that they just lost. So I don't think that'll be the case, right, for in terms of scoring for the Nuggets. I love what Monte Morris did because, look, the only the only player with any defensive prowess on Portland is Nurkic. We all know that. So it doesn't mean much that Denver was able to put up a ton of points against them as well. But I do love the fact that Monte Morris. What happened is he came in, ran that pick and roll. With Jokic, which is hugely different from Campazzo running it, who can't pull threes off the dribble nearly as well, or really at all, as Monte Morris. I think you're going to see the same thing against DeAndre Ayton, who had the ability to sort of sit back in the paint, gather double-digit rebounds consistently, and not worry about AD or anybody else being stronger than him. Such is going to, there is a player now who's going to be stronger than him, who's quicker than him, more versatile than him, and can pass just as well as any point guard that we've seen in recent history in terms of, what Jokic does on offense. So I do think, 219.5 is game one's total. I really like anytime I'm going to get a Nuggets game right now in that, or in that vicinity in terms of a total. I also, I think we can target some of their team totals. And man, I mean, I hate to say that my lead storyline for this entire series is what if Jamal Murray was playing, because I would be taking the Nuggets series title, odds at that point. But I still think they have the ability to win this series. We do want to see if Chris Paul's shoulder becomes a thing as well. If it does, continue to see the scales lean a little bit more towards the Nuggets. I do think they have a lot more ability of stopping Booker than the like I said, a hobbled LeBron James and no more Anthony Davis. Book could really get whatever he wanted with or without a healthy Chris Paul. So I'll continue to monitor if his props for games are around 30 points. Let's see what he does in game one. But I would love to take under around that in game one if it's available. So.
Yeah, and the Nuggets are plus 500 to win the West, which I think if you don't believe they can actually win the title shorthanded like this, I still think they could beat any of the teams left standing in the West, and then maybe fall to Brooklyn or Milwaukee. But that's an interesting future bet to consider as well.
Absolutely, we will look ahead. I know this is going to come out after that Mavs Clippers game 6, so we're not able to tell you have any feedback on that just yet. But that is the subject of our gift card. Do make sure you are liked and subscribed to the page. Jump in the comments, tell us who you guys have in both of these series. And we'll be looking, as I said, at that Mavs Clippers game 6 for our current prop available, which is points, rebounds, and assists for Luka. So if you're able to jump onto that, you actually have 30 minutes before game time as of right now. But we'll see what ends up being with that video in that gift card prop. We'll be back with another video for you guys to handle those Monday games. We'll see another one available other than this Nuggets Suns game. And until that, for the weekend, happy betting.